Introduction. Welcome to the Savior Syndrome. Why helping can destroy you. Have you ever felt that your relentless drive to assist others might actually be depleting your own emotional reserves? This phenomenon, often seen as a noble pursuit, might carry hidden dangers that could destabilize your own well-being. Today, we'll delve into the subtle yet profound implications of the Savior Syndrome, exploring how this deep-seated urge to help, while initially fulfilling, might ultimately lead to emotional exhaustion and a loss of personal identity. This journey will unveil the psychological landscapes that many of us navigate, often without realizing the cost to our own health. Join us as we uncover the truths behind the compelling need to be someone's hero. Understanding the psychological underpinnings of the Savior Syndrome. The Savior Syndrome often stems from a deep-rooted psychological landscape that many of us navigate, sometimes without even realizing the emotional toll it takes on us. This urge to help, to be the hero in someone else's story, can be traced back to early psychological development stages. Carl Jung, a pivotal figure in depth psychology, warned of the dangers lurking behind even the most altruistic impulses. According to Jung, our desire to help might not just be about the act of giving, but could reflect an internal void or unresolved conflicts within ourselves. For many of us around the age of 40, the drive to assist others often comes from a lifetime of conditioning to seek validation through our actions. Think about it. How often have you felt a sense of fulfillment or worth from being needed? This need can create a persona entirely based on being seen as helpful or indispensable, which, while socially applauded, can be psychologically draining. As we delve deeper into the psychology of the Savior Syndrome, it becomes evident that what starts as a noble endeavor can quickly turn into a mechanism for avoiding our own deeper issues. Jung suggested that the impulse to help is frequently a reflection of our own needs that have not been met. When we rush to solve others' problems, are we seeking resolution for our own unmet needs? This question is crucial for understanding why the Savior Syndrome can be so pervasive and persistent. It is not just about the good that comes from helping others, but also about the psychological rewards we reap from being perceived as a savior. This can be particularly resonant for those of us in our 40s, who may have spent decades building a self-identity based on our professional and personal ability to help and solve problems. Moreover, this syndrome can create a dependency on being needed, which can be detrimental to our emotional health. When there are no problems to solve, individuals suffering from the Savior Syndrome may feel lost or worthless. This dependency highlights a significant imbalance in the giver's emotional economy. Instead of deriving satisfaction from a balanced life that includes receiving help and support, the individual persists in a one-sided giving role that ultimately depletes their psychological resources. The complex relationship between the helper and those being helped is also worth considering. In many cases, those who are constantly giving are not doing so from a place of abundance, but from a deficit. This dynamic can lead to dysfunctional relationships where the helper continuously sacrifices their well-being without fostering genuine self-sufficiency in those they assist. The psychological implications of this can be severe, leading to burnout, resentment, and even a loss of personal identity. As we explore these themes, it becomes increasingly important to recognize the signs of the Savior Syndrome in ourselves and others. This recognition is the first step toward achieving a healthier balance between helping others and taking care of ourselves. For those of us in midlife, reevaluating our motivations for helping and understanding the psychological underpinnings of our actions can be transformative. It allows us to move from compulsive helping to a more balanced, intentional form of assistance that respects both our needs and those of others. The journey through understanding the Savior Syndrome is about recognizing that our desire to help should not come at the cost of our own mental and emotional health. By addressing the deeper psychological reasons behind our need to be perpetually helpful, we can start to heal and find a more sustainable way to contribute to the well-being of others without sacrificing our own. This shift is crucial for anyone who has found themselves repeatedly drained by their efforts to assist, as it opens up a pathway to a more fulfilling and balanced way of living. As we continue to explore this topic, Keep in mind that the goal is not to discourage helping others, but to foster a healthier approach that benefits both the helper and those they aim to support. The dangers of losing oneself in the act of helping others. When we dive into the realm of helping others, it often comes with a deep sense of fulfillment and purpose. Yet, there is a hidden risk that lurks beneath the surface: the danger of losing oneself. This phenomenon is not merely about spending time or resources. It's about the gradual erosion of one's identity and the overwhelming exhaustion that can result from an imbalanced giving. The savior syndrome, as explored earlier, can lead individuals down a path where their sense of self-worth becomes inextricably tied to their ability to solve others' problems. For individuals in their 30s to 60s, the compulsion to be a constant source of support for others can often be traced back to earlier life stages where one's role and identity were strongly defined by societal and familial expectations. Many of us learn from a young age that being helpful is commendable. However, without proper boundaries, this laudable trait can evolve into a relentless drive that overshadows personal needs and desires. The psychological implications of this can be quite severe, leading to a state where personal happiness and well-being are contingent upon the happiness and well-being of others. The erosion of personal identity among habitual helpers is a significant concern. Consider the parent who spends decades focusing solely on their children's needs, or the executive who defines their worth by their ability to solve workplace issues. When their children grow up or when retirement looms, these individuals often face a profound identity crisis. They may struggle to answer questions about who they are outside of their roles as caregivers or problem solvers. This crisis is not just about finding new hobbies or interests. It's about reconstructing a sense of self that was long neglected. Moreover, the emotional exhaustion that accompanies the savior syndrome cannot be overstated. Constantly being on call, always ready to mend, advise, or support, drains one's emotional reserves. For people in their middle years, particularly those balancing careers, raising children, and possibly caring for aging parents, the added stress of being a perpetual helper can lead to burnout. Emotional burnout is not just about feeling tired. It's a depletion that pervades all aspects of life, diminishing one's capacity for joy, creativity, and sometimes even basic functioning. The impact on relationships is another critical area of concern. Relationships require give and take, but when one person adopts the role of the perpetual giver, it creates an imbalance that can lead to resentment and dependency. The helper may feel unappreciated or taken for granted, while those being helped may become overly reliant or fail to develop their resilience. Such dynamics are unhealthy and unsustainable, often leading to strained or broken relationships, which can add to the helper's sense of failure and despair. It is crucial for those caught in the trap of the savior syndrome to recognize these risks and start setting boundaries. This process involves acknowledging one's limits and reaffirming that self-care is not selfish but essential. By doing so, individuals can begin to reclaim their identity and find a healthier balance between helping others and nurturing their own needs. Recovery from this deep-seated compulsion to help requires introspection and often professional guidance. It involves exploring one's motivations for helping, identifying patterns that have led to self-neglect, and learning to value oneself independent of one's usefulness to others. Therapy or counseling can be invaluable in this process, providing tools and support to rebuild one's self-esteem and establish healthier relational dynamics. In conclusion, while the desire to help is inherently noble, it must be tempered with self-awareness and self-care to prevent the loss of oneself. Those of us navigating the middle decades of life must be particularly vigilant, as the pressures and transitions characteristic of these years can make us susceptible to overextending ourselves. By striving for balance, we can continue to be helpful to others while also cultivating our well-being and personal growth. This journey of balance is not only about self-preservation, but also about fostering more genuine and sustainable helping relationships that enrich rather than deplete our lives. Real-life examples and stories of individuals affected by the savior syndrome. In exploring the savior syndrome, It becomes vividly clear through real-life examples and personal stories how this compulsion to help can deeply affect individuals across various stages of life, particularly those in their 30s to 60s. These stories not only highlight the personal consequences of the syndrome, but also illuminate the broader impact on families, workplaces, and communities. One compelling story involves Sarah, a 45-year-old healthcare professional, who epitomizes the savior syndrome. Sarah has always prided herself on being the go-to person in both her family and professional life. Over the years, her identity and self-worth became so intertwined with her role as a helper that she often found herself exhausted, yet unable to say no to any request for help. Her days were filled with back-to-back commitments, leaving no room for personal downtime or reflection. The turning point came when Sarah suffered a severe burnout that forced her to take a medical leave. The experience was a wake-up call that made her realize the unsustainable nature of her lifestyle. Similarly, Mark, a 55-year-old school principal, found himself in a perpetual cycle of trying to fix every problem within his school. Whether it was staffing issues, student discipline problems, or budget constraints, Mark felt personally responsible for solving them all. This constant pressure not only affected his health, leading to high blood pressure and anxiety, but also strained his relationships with his colleagues and family. Mark's story is a classic example of how the savior syndrome can blur personal boundaries and create an unhealthy dependence on one's role as a problem solver. Another poignant example is Lisa, a 38-year-old software developer who always went above and beyond to support her teammates, often at the expense of her own projects and well-being. Her desire to be seen as indispensable led her to take on additional responsibilities that were not part of her job description. Over time, this led to resentment from colleagues who felt that Lisa's actions prevented them from taking on more responsibility, and from her own realization that she had neglected her career growth in favor of helping others shine. These stories underscore the complex dynamics at play when the urge to help becomes a compulsion. In each case, the individuals involved had to face significant personal challenges before recognizing the need to recalibrate their approach to helping others. For Sarah, recovery involved therapy and learning to prioritize her needs. Mark had to delegate responsibilities and trust his team more, and Lisa needed to set clear professional boundaries and seek roles that allowed for her own advancement. These narratives not only reflect the personal cost of the savior syndrome, but also the potential for recovery and transformation. They highlight the importance of self-awareness and the courage to make difficult changes. The stories also serve as cautionary tales for those who might see parts of themselves in Sarah, Mark, or Lisa. In bringing these stories to life, the aim is not just to caution but to inspire. It's crucial for listeners to recognize that while the drive to help is commendable, it must be balanced with self-care and personal boundaries. The journey towards this balance is not easy, but it is essential for maintaining one's health, happiness, and effectiveness as a helper. By reflecting on these stories, listeners can gain insights into their own lives and perhaps see the early warning signs of the savior syndrome in their behaviors. This recognition is the first step toward change, leading to healthier relationships and a more balanced life. Each story serves as a reminder that helping others should not come at the cost of one's well-being, and that it is possible to be a supportive presence in others' lives without losing oneself in the process. These real-life examples provide not just a mirror to reflect on one's actions, but also a map for finding a way back to a healthier, more sustainable way of living and helping. They are a call to action for anyone who finds themselves on the brink of burnout due to their helping habits, offering hope and practical strategies for recovery and renewal. Analyzing the impacts on personal and professional relationships. The savior syndrome, while often beginning as a well-intentioned effort to aid others, can significantly impact both personal and professional relationships. As we delve into these effects, it becomes clear that the implications extend far beyond the individuals directly involved, affecting families, workplaces, and broader social networks. In personal relationships, the savior syndrome can create an imbalance that leads to dysfunction and resentment. Take the example of Elena, a 42-year-old social worker who consistently puts the needs of her clients ahead of her own and her family's. Her compulsion to be a savior at work spills over into her home life, where she finds herself managing crises instead of nurturing her relationships with her spouse and children. This relentless focus on helping others leads to a lack of presence at home, causing strain and a sense of neglect among her loved ones. The emotional toll on Elena is significant, manifesting as guilt and anxiety when she cannot fulfill everyone's needs, which paradoxically drives her to commit even more to helping others, perpetuating the cycle. In professional settings, the impact of the savior syndrome can be just as profound but manifests differently. Consider the case of Tom, a 50-year-old project manager whose identity is deeply tied to his ability to solve problems for his team. While this initially made him a valued employee, over time, it stunted the growth of his team members, who became overly reliant on his interventions. This dynamic not only hindered the development of his team's problem-solving skills, but also led to burnout for Tom, who felt he could never delegate or step back. His professional relationships suffered because his team felt disempowered, and his superiors began to question his leadership and capacity to manage effectively. The strain on relationships caused by the savior syndrome isn't limited to neglect or burnout. It also involves the nuanced dynamics of dependency and control. Helpers often unconsciously foster dependency in those they assist, whether family members, friends, or colleagues. This dependency can stunt personal growth for others, as they may feel incapable of managing life's challenges without the helper's intervention. For instance, Jessica, a 35-year-old teacher, always felt compelled to rescue her younger sister, who struggled with financial and personal issues. Over time, her sister came to rely solely on Jessica's help, never taking the initiative to solve her problems or make decisions independently. This created a toxic cycle that was hard to break, affecting Jessica's mental health and her sister's autonomy. Furthermore, the savior syndrome can inflate the helper's ego to unhealthy levels, creating a power dynamic that is difficult to dismantle. Helpers might start to believe they are indispensable, which can make them overstep boundaries and take on roles that aren't theirs to fill. This can lead to conflicts and resentment in both personal and professional realms, as others may perceive the helper's actions as controlling or patronizing rather than supportive. Addressing the impacts of the savior syndrome on relationships requires a multifaceted approach. It involves the helper recognizing their behavior patterns and understanding the underlying psychological needs driving their actions. Therapeutic interventions, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, can be beneficial in helping individuals explore and modify these behaviors. Support groups and workshops designed to teach boundary setting and self-care practices also play a crucial role in recovery. Ultimately, healing from the savior syndrome and restoring balance to effective relationships is about recalibrating one's approach to helping. It means moving from a need to control or be needed towards a more healthy, interdependent way of relating to others. This not only enhances the quality of the helper's relationships, but also promotes a more genuine and sustainable form of altruism. By examining these personal stories and broader impacts, it becomes evident that while the desire to help is a noble trait, it must be tempered with self-awareness and moderation to prevent it from undermining the very relationships it aims to strengthen. For those in their middle years especially, redefining the way they offer support can lead to more fulfilling and balanced relationships, both at home and at work. This adjustment not only benefits the helper, but also empowers those around them to grow and thrive independently, creating a healthier community for all involved. Concluding reflections, embracing balanced helping. As we reach the conclusion of our exploration into the savior syndrome, it's important to reflect on the key insights gained and consider practical steps forward. This journey through the psychological landscape of compulsive helping has not only highlighted the pitfalls associated with this syndrome, but also illuminated pathways toward healthier interactions and self-awareness. Throughout our discussion, we've seen how the compulsion to always be the helper can strain personal and professional relationships, lead to burnout, and cause a significant loss of self-identity. Recognizing these risks is the first crucial step in initiating change. Many individuals caught in the cycle of the savior syndrome may have found resonances with the stories and examples shared, from professionals like Sarah and Mark to caregivers like Laura, each struggling with the balance between aiding others and maintaining their own well-being. The critical takeaway is the importance of boundary setting. Establishing and maintaining healthy boundaries is not a one-time act, but a continuous process that requires awareness and commitment. It involves recognizing one's limits and communicating them effectively to others. This does not mean becoming less compassionate or helpful, but rather ensuring that the help provided is sustainable and doesn't compromise one's health or happiness. Moreover, fostering self-awareness is essential. Understanding the deep-seated motivations behind the urge to help continuously can reveal underlying psychological patterns and needs that may have been neglected. Engaging in reflective practices such as meditation, journaling, or therapy can facilitate this self-exploration, helping individuals to reconnect with their needs and desires separate from their roles as helpers. In practical terms, moving forward from the savior syndrome involves nurturing a balanced approach to helping. This means occasionally stepping back to allow others the space to solve their own problems, which is often crucial for their personal growth. It also involves investing in self-care practices that replenish one's physical, emotional, and spiritual energy. Activities like spending time in nature, pursuing hobbies, or simply relaxing should be viewed not as luxuries, but as essential elements of a balanced life. The call to action for anyone recognizing themselves in the dynamics of the savior syndrome is to begin the process of change today. Start small by saying no to an unnecessary request for help or by scheduling time for a personal activity that has been long postponed. Each small step contributes to a larger journey towards a healthier way of living and helping. As we conclude, remember that the goal is not to diminish the natural human impulse to help others, but to channel it in ways that are healthy and affirming for both the giver and the receiver. By adjusting how we approach helping, we can transform our interactions into genuine acts of kindness that enrich our lives and empower those around us. Let this be a turning point where you choose to support others from a place of strength and balance, making each act of help a true expression of love and self-respect.